All right. What's up, everybody? This is the first episode of our new podcast, 49ers Red Zone. I'm Rohan Chakravarthi, and here's my podcast partner, Marco Martinez. Marco, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
So I'm pretty much me, man. There's not much to really introduce about me. I'm Marco Martinez. Not much about me, to be honest. Just like to talk sports. Love the 49ers and you. Like, just want to tell them who you are.
Yeah, so I'm also, like Marco, I'm just a 49er fan. Talking about 49ers, I got into this writing thing this past year, and yeah, kicking it off. And we're just here. We're going to talk about 49ers, and it's a busy, busy week in 49er Nation because we just found out that Trey Lance is probably making his second career start against the Houston Texans, and it might be a little more given the severity of Jimmy Garoppolo's thumb injury. So, yeah, let's kick right into it. What do you expect from Trey Lance's first NFL start?
I actually expect pretty much what Trey Lance was at the Arizona Cardinals game, as well as I believe he stepped in for the last quarter of the Seattle game. And that's a quarterback who is going to provide opportunities with his legs. He's going to be a quarterback that is going to command the offense. But I want to see what Kyle Shanahan does with a full week of Trey Lance as the starting quarterback. So like I don't want to see the because against the Arizona Cardinals he was still dealing with this thumb injury that he had injured the week before. So I want to see a little bit more of Trey Lance under center. Not so much in shotgun. I want to see Trey Lance be able to roll out. Like I don't know if everyone remembers the deep play to the touchdown play to Trent Sherfield to start the preseason.
Right, right in the preseason.
That's exactly how Kyle Shanahan should use them. Roll them out, full naked, full rollouts, half rollouts, a lot of play action because that's who he was in college. So like that's exactly what you should do now. And if we look at what Kyle Shanahan has done in the past and has allowed Jimmy Garoppolo to flourish in his offense, it's exactly that. He allows him to do a lot of play action stuff. So that's exactly what Kyle Shanahan should do. But incorporate a little bit more deep shots because this is a quarterback who has a stronger arm, who's capable of actually throwing the ball downfield. So I would definitely hope the 49ers take a couple shots downfield with Trey Lance um, and use him in designed runs like they normally would. What do you actually think what Trey Lance can be, or should fans hold the expectations back a little bit? What do you think on that, Rohan?
So I think there are two things. I think one, this 49ers football team right now, regardless of quarterback, is a playoff caliber team. The talent they have is just well rounded. It's so well rounded. They have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. Despite all you hear about the cornerbacks, despite all you hear about everybody else, they have a top 10 team on both sides of the football. Now, for the quarterback position, like obviously that's going to put a lot of pressure because if it's a playoff caliber team and you don't make the playoffs, well, they're going to look at where are the shortcomings on this football team. But Trey Lance specifically, I think we have to temper our expectations. With Jimmy Garoppolo, the problem was we're seeing rookie mistakes being made in year 5 of the San Francisco system that we should be seeing only in years 1 and years 2. Trey Lance, though, he's in year 1. He's in his second career NFL start, which is I think it's his third career game itself that he's playing. He hasn't played much football, especially with the starters, because in practice he's on the scout team. And I know he's been named scout team MVP once. He's been progressing a lot on the scout team over the last month, but it's different. And when you look at I think a lot of it is not only on Trey Lance this weekend. Uh, when you look at the Arizona start, the first snap, it was a 5-on-5 offensive line, defensive line, but it was just a missed, the offensive line just shifted. Chandler Jones was able to cut free, and Trey Lance made an athletic play. But it's a huge, huge difference in terms of the offensive line, in terms of protecting for Trey Lance, because I think Jason Ponte said this, but you have to drop back for a couple of extra seconds because you have a guy who really wants to throw the football. Like he wants to wait, see plays, and throw a deep ball, rather than a Jimmy Garoppolo who's got a quick release, wants to get the ball out as fast as possible, and then move forward. So it's a completely different style. I think we should definitely temper expectations just because Trey Lance is going like directly into this offense in a crucial part of the season, although it is at home, so it's a little bit different for him. I think we definitely temper expectations because now we go from a team where it's like, okay, mistakes, guess what? You're getting fully criticized to, okay, let's see how he does. Let's see the positives and the negatives and see where he can improve because he's literally only played 2 games.
So you brought up a good point that the 49ers offensive line needs to block a different style of quarterback, right? But I wouldn't
Mhm.
necessarily say that they need to block a little bit longer. I would say they just need to understand that when Trey Lance is in there, his dropbacks are deeper than Jimmy Garoppolo's. He covers more ground than Jimmy Garoppolo, so that's the difference in my opinion. I don't think it's necessarily different in terms of how long Trey Lance takes to get through progressions and how he wants to take the deep shot. Yeah, deep shots take a little bit longer to develop, but I think more so it's the way. So if we watched when Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick came in, Colin Kaepernick had the same situation, same issue. It wasn't that he was taking longer to get through reads. It's just his drop back is so much longer than Alex Smith was because those quarterbacks want to get the ball out. They want to hit 3-step and get out versus Trey Lance, he'll hit three, he might hitch, and then he's throwing because he's still doing everything else the same. So it looks a little bit like he's holding the ball a little bit longer, but it's not necessarily holding the ball longer. So I'm excited to see what Trey Lance is going to do, and we are going to have a lot of people who are going to criticize him, as Jimmy Garoppolo will be playing because we have like the 49ers a weird situation. 49ers fan base on Twitter is very weird in terms of people are you're either a Jimmy stan or a Jimmy hater or you're a Trey guy or a Jimmy guy. So like the guys who love um, Jimmy Garoppolo are definitely going to be like, well, you guys should hold him to the same standard. Well, it's like, well, you can hold a quarterback to the same standard in terms of if he's missing throws like Kyle Juszczyk throw. That if he's missing that throw, yes, you criticize Trey Lance for the accuracy issue, but you're not going to criticize Trey Lance for making a rookie mistake and throwing to a safety like Jimmy Garoppolo is doing. So those are the situations where I also think fans should temper back their expectations from Trey Lance because as a rookie, you're gonna make the throw. Like for example, with the Cardinals game, he overthrew, I believe it was Deebo Samuel or Trent Sherfield,
It might have been not Sherfield. I think it was Travis Benjamin on his
Travis
interception.
Benjamin.
Yeah.
So on that interception, so he overthrew. It's the right read, the exact right read you want to throw. But now with his thumb injury that he was dealing with, which I don't want to make an excuse for him because he played that game, but that
Mhm.
injury that Kyle Shanahan ended up saying affected him throwing the ball. So it's like those are like, okay, well, that's a rookie mistake. He has to get it down or pull it down and pick up the first down rather than make that errant throw. So it's one of those ones where I think Kyle Shanahan's going to rely heavy on the run, even though Steve Mullen says more passes than run, please. The reason why is because the Houston Texans are one of the worst defenses against the run. They allow 4.7 yards per carry. And with this 49ers potentially getting Elijah Mitchell back, you have to just run it down their throat and then play action off of that. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes.
I agree. I think the 49ers will definitely try and work through the run because when you look at it, right, apart from last week where the 49ers threw about I think it was 37 dropbacks to 21 runs, they've been a predominantly running football team. And even when Trey Lance first started, he ran 16
Mm-hmm.
times. I think they ran over it was 25 to 30 times, I think at least. And I think it'll definitely be dialed back on the number of Trey Lance runs, but that's because we have a healthy backfield now. Elijah Mitchell is going to get more than the 8 carries that he got. We also have Jeff Wilson Jr., who, in my opinion, is the best running back in this backfield apart from Debo Samuel. So, what's the amount of running backs that you have on this team right now? It's crazy. I think that the amount of talent that you have right now makes the game easier for Trey Lance, makes the game easier for a rookie, and I think that that's important. And Steve here, he says he wants more Trey passes than Trey runs. I hope that happens because I hope it's more than. I mean, in terms of its pass attempts, I think that we definitely want more Trey Lance pass attempts because he ran 16 times. I'd assume he runs 8 to 10 times this game, somewhere around there, somewhere around the Debo Samuel amount of runs, with some being designed and some being just him using his athleticism to make a play. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm definitely going to be interested to see how many deep shots Kyle Shanahan takes because what he might do in this Trey Lance game is use the deep shot as a decoy to try and hit an underneath route or try and hit a middle route, like he did with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's just now the deep threat is a real threat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the thing is with Trey Lance, a lot of people bring up the 16 runs, but I want to say when I went back to watch that game and I counted all the designed Trey Lance runs, it was about 8, and then Trey Lance had about
Yeah,
8
you're right.
scrambles. It might be 7 to 9 scrambles or somewhere
Mhm.
around that range. It was about 50-50. Half of them were scrambles, half of them were designed, but a lot of people had problems with the QB powers. So that's where, I mean, if you're going to have Trey Lance run the ball, get him outside where he could get down or get out of bounds rather than him between the tackles, because that's where I did have a problem with Kyle Shanahan calling the QB powers, even though that's what Trey Lance is capable of doing, and that's what he did in college. Is I'd rather see him be able to get away from the big hits. And to go on to the deep shots, the Houston Texans run a lot of cover two. They run a lot of that Tampa two with
Oh,
Lovie
a
Smith.
lot. And the
So
thing is, they don't change out of that cover two. They stay in
mhm.
that cover two the entire game. I know what you mean.
so so running that cover two, it's going to allow Kyle Shanahan to run a couple cover two beaters, and it's going to show what Trey Lance could do because running the cover two, it gives you a lot of options for a quarterback like Trey Lance, who has a strong arm, who could hit the intermediate throws, who could also use his legs, and then now you're out of position when he starts to scramble. So it's going to be very, very. I believe it's going to be very run heavy offense. That goes off
Mhm.
of the play action. And it's gonna be very beneficial for Trey Lance in terms of allowing the safeties. As soon as you start running, safeties are coming up, linebackers are coming up. Now that's when you start throwing everything over those linebackers and you start taking shots. And I think Kyle Shanahan, I believe he's going to dial up. It's a bold take, a bold prediction I'm going to put out there right now. I think Kyle Shanahan dials up a deep shot within the first 2 drives, and I think Trey Lance is going to hit on that deep shot.
I think it's definitely a possibility. And what we've seen in the first two games, right? Trey Lance has had that opportunity. He runs that wheel route play. I forget the play off the top of my head. The one that Garoppolo missed. He
Leak?
ran that same one with Deebo Samuel. Yeah, he ran the same one with Deebo Samuel when Deebo Samuel got the 75-yard touchdown. And I know it was an easier throw probably because Deebo Samuel stopped, but Trey Lance hit him. And he ran a very, very similar play with Trent Sherfield, where he got Sherfield
Mm-hmm.
over the top for the touchdown in preseason. I think we're going to see a lot of these type of plays. And I think it's not that we're going to see a lot, but I think these plays are going to mean something because they're either going to stretch out the defense if they don't work, or they're going to work and they're going to move the 49ers down the football field. And one thing I think, too, that's really important to note, the 49ers were inside Arizona territory like 5 to 6 times when Trey Lance first started. Sure, they didn't execute and got only 10 points because Kyle Shanahan said, F it, I'm going to be aggressive. But Trey Lance, like, he was moving the football as well, not only through the air, through the run game as well, but they were moving the football. And I think that that's an important thing because if we see Trey Lance move the football like he did, I think against the Texans team, which is a much worse defense than the Arizona defense he faced
Oh
earlier,
yeah.
with George Kittle back, I think this is he's got definitely a high chance to score a good amount of points. Yeah.
And the thing is with a good thing you brought up is how he was moving the ball. And I believe the 49ers had one game this season where they only had 1 3 and out. And that game was against the Arizona Cardinals with Trey Lance. Now everyone talks about Trey Lance not putting points on the board, but at the same time, is if you're gonna criticize Trey Lance for not putting points on the board, I think that's more so a Kyle Shanahan a criticism because Kyle Shanahan could have kicked field goals. He could have kicked about 3 to 4 field goals in that game. Instead, he opted to go for a 4th and 5 or 4th and 3. So those are the things where I think Kyle's going to take points if he's in that situation. I don't think you could pass on points with the rookie quarterback because it gives you that confidence. Yeah, we just got points on the board. Next one, let's get 7 now. So I think it's going to be a very fun game. I think also the defense is going to be very problematic against a rookie quarterback like Davis Mills, who I personally thought he was a good quarterback coming out of the draft. Before the 49ers traded up in the draft, Rohan, I tweeted out, I was like, if the
I saw
49ers
your
keep
tweet.
Jimmy
Yeah.
Garoppolo, we should definitely go
Davis
after
Mills.
Davis Mills. Because
Hmm.
he is a guy who you could develop and you could sit for an entire year and he could spot play where if you needed him to play a game or two, he could play a game or two. So I thought that would have been a perfect quarterback to sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo. Instead, the 49ers went ballsy and they traded up to the 3rd pick overall. And they said, you know what? I want the best quarterback in this draft that we could possibly get. And I think that was a very smart decision by the 49ers because at the same time as yes, you did have Jimmy Garoppolo, you did have a quarterback who's very capable of leading a team. Although even though a lot of people say he's not, Jimmy Garoppolo is a very capable quarterback in terms of leading teams to success. So I thought that would be a good compliment. Davis Mills, who comes from that same style, run heavy, West Coast style of offense. Even though Kyle Shanahan is a kind of not West Coast, but it has West Coast
Right.
tendencies.
It has some
I
of the
thought,
West Coast elements.
yeah. So I thought it would have been a very good idea to go after Davis Mills. And now he's over there with the Houston Texans. They took him in the third round, and I think he's actually pushing his way to becoming the Houston Texans quarterback. I don't know if they end up drafting a quarterback next year, because of how he's playing. I think they'd be smarter to build around him. And if he's not the guy, at least you have a team that is good enough for a rookie to step in. Because even if you take a rookie now, that team's still going to be very, very bad. So if you take a rookie quarterback, and if they do take one, they're not that many good ones that high in the draft. So they might end up trying to build around Davis Mills. So very interesting week. Two rookie quarterbacks facing it off. One who's from the Bay Area, played at Stanford, and one who calls the Bay Area his home now.
And I think one other thing is, like, looking at the draft, right? And looking at, or first I'll point on Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Jimmy Garoppolo definitely, like, the leadership aspect was there. Like, we see it every time the 49ers post some post-game blurb with this team. We saw it in the mic'd up type of thing. There was a reason that the 49ers ended up bringing back Jimmy Garoppolo after looking for every single quarterback option. Now, did they think Jimmy Garoppolo is the answer for 2021 and beyond? No. They went for Matthew Stafford. They went for Deshaun Watson, and even after that, I think the one part that people aren't trying to or forgetting, they went for guys like Joe Flacco, and they also went for
Andy Dalton.
Andy Dalton. They gave him, I think, $4 million. He got 10 from the Bears, so he went there. So they were going for these bridge type of quarterbacks, probably with the intention of moving Jimmy Garoppolo on draft day, probably to a team like the New England Patriots or whoever was offering them the highest package, to move forward and get their quarterback of the future while having a bridge quarterback lead them like a Jimmy Garoppolo in 2019, potentially to the playoffs, because this is a playoff caliber football team. But I think that after all, like after viewing the ups and downs, Kyle Shanahan said, okay, look, we have a winner. Not only is he a winner, but we have a leader in the football team on the team full of one-year deals. There's a lot of one-year deals that came back this past offseason. On a team full of one-year deals, we have a leader, and if the locker room stays fit for the entire year, we might be an attractive free agent destination in 2022. Yep. When we hand the reins over to Trey Lance, and maybe be able to bring some of these guys back at a discounted price, at a price that suits us, or bring in some other guys, potentially an edge rusher alongside Nick Bosa, that type of thing. Yep. So that's where I think the 49ers were going with their 2021 plan.
And it also talks very highly of what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch thought of Jimmy Garoppolo in terms of his play on the field. Because if you look at it, so if you're going after guys like Andy Dalton to be a bridge quarterback, I mean, you're going after guys. Right. I do know. I want to say they were in the mix for Mitch Trubisky. Like you said, Andy Dalton, Mitch Trubisky, and I thought they were, as well as Joe Flacco. So it's very interesting that those three names are the guys that they thought could be as good as Jimmy Garoppolo with a playoff team with a lot of one-year contract guys. So it's like, well, those guys aren't that good. But yes, Andy Dalton with the Kyle Shanahan, I believe Kyle Shanahan would be able to get the best out of those three guys. I think he would be able to. I believe we'd have the same record if those three were our quarterbacks. Only because Kyle Shanahan elevates his quarterbacks enough, and his offense is efficient. So a lot of people talk about the word efficient. Jimmy Garoppolo as efficient. Well, you can't really say Jimmy Garoppolo is efficient. It's more so the entire offense is an efficient offense, and that's more so a compliment to Kyle Shanahan, not necessarily Jimmy Garoppolo. Yes, he's playing efficient football, but it's the entire offense that's efficient. And I think that's where a lot of people get carried away with the word efficient around Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah. So I think that's something that isn't talked about enough, in how Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were actually after those three quarterbacks. Because those are very comparable quarterbacks to Jimmy Garoppolo in terms of what they could do on the field. Mitch Trubisky was actually drafted number 2 overall. The 49ers could have had him. Instead, they ended up drafting Solomon Thomas. So it's very interesting how they tried bringing him in and then tried bringing Andy Dalton in at a cheaper price. But if they would have did that, this team would have been very more stacked in terms of who they had on their defense and on their offense, because they would have had $25 million to play with.
I know what you mean. And one thing you were talking about efficient. I tweeted last week one thing. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is the one player where I've seen just hoodwink metrics in a way. And I'm a metrics guy. I understand a lot of people love the eye test, and I do too. I watch film. I love the eye test, but I'm like a data science guy. I'm a computer science guy. I think these metrics are extremely valuable, but they're valuable in context. Because when you see people throw out raw stats, right? 8.5 yards per attempt. He's the number one in the NFL. EPA, he's third, right? All these different metrics where you see Garoppolo is excelling, you don't understand the value of those metrics, because that 8.5 yards per attempt, guess what it comes with? The number one in the league in yards after the catch per completion.
Yep.
And all these different metrics, right? Even EPA. When you look at EPA is an amazing team stat, because EPA essentially explains how functional a team is on a certain play and how functional the team is throughout the course of the game. And the 49ers are third. It just shows, guess what? The offense clicks. The quarterback can make plays to wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends who can make plays and extend plays to put the team in a better position to score. That's essentially what EPA is telling you. It's not telling you that Jimmy Garoppolo is extremely efficient, throwing better passes than is expected. Because where does Jimmy Garoppolo's EPA completely, where does it increase? It increases on plays like screens. It increases on plays like crossers, like the one that Deebo Samuel took 45 yards after the catch to get to the 2-yard line. It increases on these type of plays. And not only are those just quarterback efforts, they're a whole team effort, because guess what? Blocking's involved, quarterback play is involved, but more importantly, yards after the catch are involved. And like these supplementary options like Deebo Samuel and all that complement the quarterback, they're all involved in these metrics. And that's why you got to take them with a grain of salt, or you have to use an evaluative measure that combines multiple metrics to improve the efficiency of a quarterback. Because Jimmy Garoppolo is always going to be one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. But how does that accuracy come alive? He's used perfectly by Kyle Shanahan. He can throw under 2.5 seconds, so people can come off their brakes in a slant route and take it. That's good for Jimmy Garoppolo's completion rate. Screens are good for Jimmy Garoppolo's completion rate. You don't ever see really a screen from Jimmy Garoppolo being broken up. You don't ever see these like different plays. But then obviously when you see the big plays down the field, those big incompletions like the ones to use check, those are incompletions. It only pops up as one incompletion in the scorebook, but it's a huge harmful incompletion that gives up 7 points for this football team.
You talk about completion percentage, which is a very interesting stat. So last night, prior to the Miami Dolphins and New Orleans Saints game, the quarterback who led that stat was actually Tua Tagovailoa. And Tua Tagovailoa doesn't really throw much. He throws a lot behind the line of scrimmage. He throws an intermediate route. So, of course, he should have higher completion percentage, because you're throwing higher percent of balls. If you're throwing 5 to 6 yard slants, 5 to 6 yard breaking in routes, swing passes, bubble screens, you should be completing those passes at a very, very high rate. And so that's why completion percentage isn't always a great evaluator in terms of accuracy. You want to see where the quarterback is placing the ball. And so that's why it's best to look at these stats with a grain of salt. But you also have to, like you said, you have to look at them with context. And then and in my opinion, that's watching the film. Because the film is going to tell you a little bit more than what the stats are going to say. Yes, you have stats, but for example, I could skew any stat for each way. If I could argue it one way with one stat, and I could turn around and make that stat the same exact argument for another way. So stats are very misleading as well. But I also think at the same time, so can film. Film could be very misleading as well. And why I say that is because a lot of times we have people who watch film and they don't know what coverages they're in. They're rewatching the game. So when you rewatch the game and you don't know if a team is in cover 6, they're in cover 2, cover 3, depending on what they're in, you can't really evaluate that analytics with the film. So a lot of times, like for example, though, I think Jimmy Garoppolo Do I think he's good enough to win Super Bowl? I do not. I would say about the 16th to 17th ranked quarterback, right in that 50% where he at times he could play like he's in the top 12, and then at times he plays like he's the quarterback like we've seen in against the Tennessee Titans. I might be over exaggerating by saying the 30th ranked quarterback, but there's times where he plays like a very poor quarterback. So the price that he's being paid, it shows that the 49ers needed to go out in the draft, and it sucks that he has to go out with an injury, because you want to see quarterbacks like Jimmy Garoppolo, who is a good guy. He's showed a lot to this team and brought a lot to this fan base. You want to see them go out on their own terms with it, not seeing them get injured. But question.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Is it me, or do you think the way the injury was reported was weird?
So I do. I tweeted on it as well. I do think it's kind of weird in how it was reported, not only because it was reported 4 days after Cal Juszczyk said he knew at halftime. So I'd assume the team knew at halftime. It wasn't in Shanahan's post-game report, and Shanahan kind of he kind of has a knack, to say even minor injuries, and it wasn't ever reported during the game. And so we don't hear anything Thursday, right? We don't hear anything throughout the weekend. Although David and Lombardi of The Athletic, he kind of posted when we found out that Shanahan and the team actually knew that they were probably not playing Garoppolo that Sunday. I think it was a rule out that Garoppolo was playing that Sunday. Shanahan or Lombardi said that on Monday. But then the thing was, we found out from Shanahan that it was nothing but a thumb sprain. He ruled out that it was a fracture. 2 hours later, Adam Schefter tells us it was actually not only a torn UCL, but in addition, a fracture in that same thumb. So I find that a little weird. And I think all it is like them trying to throw off the Texans in terms of preparation. I don't try and go into the conspiracy theory kind of part, but it's just interesting that in how we heard it, especially with all of the other 49er news that we've been like listening to over the last couple of times. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I went full. I'll be honest. I went full conspiracy theorist because it's like, so. For me, I understood. I've played quarterback growing up a little bit until I got into high school. So to hold a ball and to not be able to squeeze that ball, that's where you control the ball. And yeah, it's not release and everything, but you control. For example, I have a water ball that's pretty big. If I cannot grip, I cannot throw the damn ball. So
no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
To hear a thumb and then he threw the ball 19 times after. And usually when you see a quarterback bang their finger or they're feeling discomfort in their hand, you'll see them go to the sideline and grab the ball, try to throw it to see how they could try to compensate that. And I never seen that throughout the game. And then the no post game injury on not being on the post game injury report. And then Aziz,
and I know people will look at it. It's like that. I remember people will like overlook at it, but Jimmy Garoppolo was like opening up a water bottle with that thumb. That was so funny.
Yeah, I seen that too. So like Jennifer Lee Chan posted that on her Instagram this morning, and she posted him opening his water bottle, him closing it, and then he held his water like this, and you can see his thumb pinching. So it's like, well, how does that work? Like I understand adrenaline. I understand playing sports. I understand adrenaline. I tore my MCL, and I ran up and down the court thinking, oh, it's just a knee sprain. But I had a torn MCL, and when you're playing a sport, the adrenaline and the desire, the heart you have to just be like, it just hurts. No, not an injury. It's nothing serious. So I understand that part of it. But I went more so into the conspiracy theories on why he isn't reporting his injury the right way. I understand he's a quarterback who has trade value for you, but why not just report it the proper way? I still don't think this injury, it's a 4 to 6 injury. I don't think it's going to hurt his trade value that much. He's already put on a tape throughout the season, good, bad tape. He has good tape, bad tape in 2019. So it's like, why lie? Or why not just, I shouldn't say lie, but why hide the injury and then hide the extent of the injury? Because I know Kyle Shanahan knew that it was either a torn thumb or a broken thumb.
Yeah, but I think the one thing is, like, we didn't hear anything, and Garoppolo, I'd assume he re-aggravated it somewhere between Thursday and Monday if we didn't hear from it. Because he's normally fairly close. Like he'll report the injury after the game. We didn't hear about anything post game. So I assume Garoppolo assured it was nothing or didn't tell the coaching staff at all. Actually, no, he probably did tell the coaching staff. So I'm not sure. But the one question I have in all of this, like I'll leave the injury aside and how they reported it aside, but after that first throw where Garoppolo clearly missed in the third quarter, his first throw was an interception. He outthrew, like he just missed Deebo Samuel. I mean, it was a tight window, but he missed him, threw it straight to Amani Hooker, and set him up at the 18-yard line where Tennessee essentially got to reclaim the game starting from that drive because that was like the defense got to stop, I believe, to start third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gave the ball right to them and gave them the opportunity to score. It was an 18-yard drive. They scored the touchdown after that, and they just had momentum throughout that. How do you like not only how do you let him play if he's injured, how do you let him continue playing if he's injured after that throw? I don't understand that.
And that's thing that where I'm like, well, how? Because when he went to the sideline, Kyle Shanahan didn't really look at him or go talk to him. So it's like if you knew
Right.
he was injured, if you didn't know he was injured, why not go talk to your quarterback? Hey, why did you miss that? I understand you're the head coach, and this is where the offense coordinator comes into play. So he's probably on the phone or looking at the tablet, talking to quarterback coach Rich Gangaro. But it's like at some point, I think that this is more to blame on Kyle Shanahan than Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think at some point I need to be like, well, Kyle Shanahan, that's your fault. At the same time as even though Jimmy was playing poorly as a player who everyone talks about Jimmy as a team first guy, if you knew your thumb was the reason why you weren't hitting throws,
Mm-hmm.
why are you not telling your team and why are you still trying to play through when you're playing very poorly because of this thumb and you know you're going to be criticized by the entire media?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But moving on from this whole crazy like Jimmy G debacle type of thing. 49ers playoffs. They're close. And they're especially with the Saints loss, they're now 8-6. If they win this weekend and if the Saints lose, they are going to be in the playoffs. My question to you, out of the four I think the four division teams are going to stand in terms of Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Dallas, and the Los Angeles Rams. Out of those four, rank them. How do you think? What's your preference on how we play?
I don't really care who we play, Rohan. I don't. The reason why I don't care who we play is because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they have a very good offensive line. So they're going to be able to counter our defensive line.
Right.
So now Tom Brady against our secondary is what worries me. And then their defense actually same situation. They have a very good run defense, but a poor secondary, and we don't know what Trey Lance is going to do passing wise. Can he outpass them? Probably.
Right.
I don't know. I can't say whether he's going to be able to lead a team in the playoffs throwing the ball 40 times. And then we have the Los Angeles Rams,
Right.
where if we play them, I think we could beat them. But now you make it a lot harder with the rookie quarterback. Even though we could use the same game plan that Kyle Shanahan has used with Jimmy Garoppolo, and he beats them with Jimmy Garoppolo. And then we have so it was the Bucks, the Rams,
Packers. The last team is the
Packers.
Packers.
The Packers are the 1 seed, so that we won't see them. If
You're right.
everything stays pat, we won't see the Packers until after the first round. I believe if we get past the first
Until
round.
it's the championship game or sorry,
No,
divisional
no,
round actually.
divisional round or championship, depending on the outcome of 2-7 seed. And I think there's one more team. There is the
Dallas.
man, and it's Dallas team. I think we match up fairly well against Dallas. They have great receivers. I think we could counter their receivers with our pass rush. I think their offensive line is a good offensive line. I don't think it's as it used to be. I think apply pressure, but very good defensive line. They have good secondary. However, if the 49ers play the Dallas Cowboys, I would target. It's funny because I would target Trevon Diggs a lot. He gives the most
I know
yards.
what you mean. Yeah.
However, he also has the most interceptions. So I think I would prefer to play if I had to choose a team, I would prefer to play the Rams or the Cowboys over um the Bucks and the Packers.
Okay, interesting you say that. For me, I think the number one team that I'd prefer to play probably would be the Rams. The only scare would be we play them twice, so they'd have a ton of game film on us going into that wild card matchup. But I think if we can beat the Rams in Week 18, I don't know if they'll sit their starters or not, depending on if they clinch the division and if they choose to, if they care about seeding or not. But depending on if they sit their starters, I think if they sit their starters, we definitely have a shot. But if we can prove we can beat them with a rookie quarterback in Week 18 at their own stadium, I think that that's definitely a good recipe for success. And I think we've shown we can beat them before. Our offensive line has like held up pretty darn well against their stacked defensive line with Aaron Donald and Von Miller. I think that our cornerbacks or their cornerbacks are definitely good. I think the one thing is while their cornerbacks are good, I think we can like I think our offense if scheme itself works well into isolating those cornerbacks and kind of taking them out of the game plan. Meaning we run a lot of the underneath stuff, moving cornerbacks around, and also we run a lot of routes where cornerbacks kind of have to depend on each other rather than being in man coverage solely because we run so much motion, because we run so many crossing routes, because we run this entirely schemed offense where it's a lot of misdirection. Like even the juice wheel route play that we saw. What's the whole point of that play? The first guy, the guy up top, while I think Juice was in the slot for that play, the far right guy, he crosses over. There's a guy who, and then both defenders go toward him, leaving Juice open. If you got plays like that that can isolate or that can take advantage of man coverage, like the Rams like to run, I think that that's definitely beneficial for you offensively. I think the run game also worked well, and I think game pace. If the 49ers can control offense against the Rams, they do well defensively versus the Rams offense, I think that that's where they pose most of the challenge. But I think the Rams offensive line isn't as strong as some of the other playoff teams. So I think the pass rush can definitely hit home for the Rams. We saw it hit home in the first matchup. Also, the Rams now have reinforcements on offense. They have Odell Beckham alongside Cooper Kupp, while they also lost Robert Woods. So they definitely can stretch the field. But we've seen teams that wanted to stretch the field against us. Seattle Seahawks to be an example. And I know the Seattle Seahawks beat us, but how did we play the Seattle Seahawks? They knew about our pass rush. So they had to resort to screen plays and things like that. And we play very well defensively at the line of scrimmage. I think that that's one of our strengths. And I think that if the Rams try and resort to some sort of similar game plan to avoid our pass rush, it won't bode that well for them, especially if we have Azeez Al-Shire back as a stout tackler. And if they don't, I think they have to deal with our pressure. So I think our offense matches well against their defense, and I think their offense doesn't match as well against our defense for it to be a good enough matchup. So that'd be my first. For the second matchup, I think I'd prefer. So it's Dallas, Tampa Bay, and Green Bay. And surprisingly, I think I'd prefer Tampa Bay. The reason is they're not as healthy right now. I don't know how their defensive back position group will look in 2 weeks. I don't know exactly how their team's going to look because Mike Evans right now, he's out with a hamstring. Chris Godwin's out for the year. So they have Antonio Brown. And Antonio Brown's damn good, but they only have one legitimate receiver right now. I don't know how the running back group is going to look because I think Ronald Jones is in for Leonard Fournette right now. So they're not even on their number one running back. They've had COVID issues a lot. So I don't know how their offensive line group's going to work. So I think if the group stands as the group right now, I think that that's a team where the 49ers can find ways to exploit what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are missing. And I think that's a big thing. So those are the two teams I'd prefer to play. I think Dallas, I think they're somewhat underrated just because they're so talented offensively. And that's a big deal for me because if they're that talented offensively, despite our top 10 defense, it's going to require a lot of D'Amico Ryans adjusting in order for us to somehow compete with that Dallas offense because they can work on the run. They have two very solid running backs, just like us, that have two different skill sets. Tony Pollard, he can accelerate, and Ezekiel Elliott, he can pound on the ground. And then they have such a stout passing game. And I know their offensive line has been injured a lot, but I think that they still have a very solid offensive line. So I think it's a complete offensive team. That's why I think they're a little more challenging. What do you think about like the next 2 weeks? Do you think that the 49ers can beat not only the Texans, but do you think the 49ers can beat the Rams in week 18? Let me say this. Man, I'm excited for Trey Lance, you know? Like Trey Lance, it's his time now. That's like we were gonna have it next year, but it's his time now. So I'm excited for Trey Lance. I'm ready to get him like I'm just ready to get him integrated in the offense. But like you said earlier, I think this defense, right, works well against what Davis Mills and the Texans are going to bring to the table. They didn't have Brandon Cooks last week, and they didn't have a couple of their key players, and yet they beat the Chargers 41-29. I don't think that happens with a healthy Nick Bosa because they didn't have Joey Bosa last week. They had Nick Bosa right.
Yep.
We have Nick Bosa, so I think that's a big thing. Also, I think that the 49ers, I think they're just a lot more of a better defensive team. Like Rex Burkhead ran for 149 yards on the Texans. I think our run defense is a lot more stout than I think the Chargers are like 28th to 30th in run defense in terms of yards allowed this year. We are much better on the run, especially with DJ Jones, Ark Armstead, both covering up as run stoppers. I think that they're definitely a very big help for this offense. We have tacklers, stout tacklers like Aziz Al-Shire. We have Fred Warner. We have Jaquaski Tartt, Jimmy Ward. We have a lot of good pieces on this defense that counter the Houston run game. And the Houston run game kind of led to the success of the Houston pass game last week. And I think without a strong run game,
Yes.
Davis Mills is going to be put into a lot of pressure situations, a lot of third and longs, and that's going to be that doesn't always work well for a rookie quarterback, especially with the pressure that the 49ers face. So expect 3 to 4 sacks. Expect this 49ers pass rush to kind of hit home because the Texans offensive line, it's not that strong outside of Laramie Tunsil. So or yeah, outside of Laramie
Mm-hmm.
Tunsil, it's
Yep.
not
Yep.
really
You're right.
that strong. So yeah, so expect the 49ers to kind of hit home. And then offensively, the Texans defense, it's all right, but now without Zach Cunningham, they don't really have a force over the middle. I don't think that they're that strong. I don't know if Jonathan Grenard, their best pass rusher, is going to come back, but still, regardless, I think the 49ers should be able to run the ball fairly well. I think you said it as well before. The Texans struggle against the run, and I think that's what we excel at.
Mm-hmm.
So I think even with like a rookie quarterback in, I think we can use Trey Lance's ability on the run. We can use Elijah Mitchell if he comes back. We can use Jeff Wilson, Deebo Samuel, all of the weapons in our arsenal to try and create a strong run game, and then complement that with us like a good passing game, a good efficient passing game that is, with nice, easier opportunities for Trey Lance. So I think this is definitely a good kind of setup for him into that Rams game because it's a easier defense, probably helps him read progressions a little easier because he's going to get pressured a little less. He'll have more time in the pocket than he did against the Arizona game. So he's definitely going to have, I think, a couple of things to his advantage to make or to have a pretty solid performance altogether.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. And one other thing on the Rams game, right? The Rams game, I think, is, I don't know, I think a lot of people are trying to think, oh, wow, the 49ers have to win out. But I think the 49ers have the odds in their favor. Obviously, they control their own destiny going into the playoffs because if they win out, they're in the playoffs right now because the Saints lost last night. But they don't have to win out. I think, especially, we'll see how it happens at the end of this week. But if the 49ers win, if the Saints lose, they're in. It just depends on playoff seeding. And I don't think they can get all the way up to 5. I know they can drop to 7, but I think that it's between 6 and 7 as to where they're going to end up in the playoff season.
They could drop to 7, but they can't get to 5.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's a little, yeah, I can.
There. Okay, so on what we were saying, I agree with what you're saying with the 49ers defense line getting home to Davis Mills, stopping the run. And once you stop the run for any quarterback, especially rookie quarterbacks, it makes life hard for them. And then I think the 49ers are going to have the opportunity to create overs, give the ball back to Trey Lance. I play to a lot of teams. They play spoiler defensively, special team wise. We have to be very, very sound when we play the Texans. Hopefully the 49ers allow Davis to have to stop the run. And now I believe I'm going to see Nick Bosa with 2 sacks this week. He didn't get a sack last week.
Sacks?
He's on the chase to get some sacks. 2 sacks this week. Puts him at 17 sacks on the season. I'm going to go out and say Ambry Thomas gets an interception this season.
Ambry Thomas, that's definitely a talking point. Yeah, I can. But Ambry Thomas, like you said, I think that's definitely a talking point because I know both of you and I are huge fans of Ambry Thomas. I think he's definitely, a solid player. I think Ambry Thomas showed a lot to like in the last week. In his first game as a starter, Ambry Thomas, you saw him getting eaten up by Jamar Chase. But I thought Ambry Thomas was step in step with Chase. He was in the right spot. He turned his head around even, which was a sign you don't see from a lot of corners leading to a lot of those penalties. I think Ambry Thomas, he did commit the 2, not pass interference, but the 2 other penalties in his first start. that were a little harmful toward him. But I think Ambry Thomas definitely was a solid player for the 49ers this last week, meaning he was in position twice. He only allowed, or three times, he was only allowed two catches on five attempts. Both were to A.J. Brown. One was off of push off, which was the 40-yard catch. And then another one was a short 4-yard completion, which is totally fine. He got two pass breakups, and on both of them, he found a way to play the man. Ambry Thomas has done a great job in terms of playing the man and knocking the ball out of players' hands. He doesn't go too late. He waits for the ball to come so he doesn't commit penalties, and he's just in position. I think that's a great sign we're seeing from a young rookie cornerback, and I think he starts for this team in 2022 if they don't bring Jason Verrett back. He is a valuable piece to this future, and I know that he probably won't start when Emmanuel Mosley comes back, but this is some key time that Ambry Thomas is playing right now.
I think very good argument to say he probably might get playing time even with Emmanuel Mosley back. I'm not saying over Emmanuel had a hell of a season. So saying to think about allowing him to get playing time over Josh Norman or rotate him and Josh Norman in and out. Allowing him to see a couple more nickel reps. He has earned his way to get some playing time when Emmanuel Mosley gets that. I think a lot of people see the negative on Ambry Thomas from last week, and it will be a free play. He got pushed off. His biggest weakness, in my opinion, right now, is his strength, and that has nothing to do with him just getting in the weight room. So sick his year before COVID year. He lost a lot of strength and a lot of weight. He lost about 30 pounds due to an illness. I can't think of the illness on the top of my head. So he lost an entire year to work out. So he is at that point where once he gets that strength back, you could tell he's still getting that strength back. Each week he looks now he looks like he's in weight, looks like he's a lot bigger already. So it's very, very nice to see Ambry Thomas play well. I do think he's going to get an interception. A very, very big talking point after this week, especially him, a good receiving core with Odell Beckham, guys like Cooper Kupp. So I think he's definitely going to be starting in 2022. I think he should be back in 2022.
Yeah, I agree. I personally think that he should start in 2022 just because the 49ers, first of all, they don't give a lot of money to cornerbacks in the offseason anyway. I think their number one defensive priority should be another edge rusher opposite of Nick Bosa. We've seen how Arden Key plays. We've seen how different players play in this 49ers system. They just develop edge rusher into talent. Like Chris Cockerick has done an amazing job as the defensive line coach. I think the 49ers should definitely go after another edge rusher because that's how the 49ers base their defenses. We saw in the offseason DeMeco Ryans say, look, we want to get aggressive on defense. That starts with the defensive line. The linebackers follow suit, and the cornerbacks and the defensive backs, they are kind of like that third level or essentially a third priority in this defense. That's why DeMeco Ryans' defense has been top 10 with, at best, average cornerback play this season. So DeMeco Ryans, I think, and he's going to push Kyle Shanahan to get another edge rusher because Nick Bosa is the number one edge rusher on this team. They don't really have a solidified number two. He's been developing, but, they don't have this kind of like number two kind of person right now. And I think they could definitely get that in the free agency or if they want to draft one. So I think that Ambry Thomas is in good line to start in 2022. I know a lot of people, I know you're even a proponent for J.C. Jackson. I just think he's out of the 49ers price range, especially at a position that they don't really require. And I think Ambry Thomas and Emmanuel Mosley, the thought is, can Emmanuel Mosley be a number one? Because Emmanuel Mosley would likely have to be the number one next year if Ambry Thomas is on the team or if Ambry Thomas is a starter, because Ambry Thomas likely won't be likely to be able to be the number one in 2020. And that's where the question is, because Emmanuel Mosley, he's best suited as a number two. He's a lockdown number two. but that's normally what he's been all his career. That's why Jason Verrett was brought back, even after having that amazing season, despite his injury concerns, because Jason Verrett, that's a number one corner when healthy. But Emmanuel Moseley, we've seen him being normally a number two. His size and like his build isn't really of a number one cornerback in the NFL. It's going to be interesting how he goes against top corners. I know he's DK Metcalf's, like he's DK's daddy, right? But we know that. But Emmanuel Moseley, on the other hand, Emmanuel Moseley, on the other hand, like he's been normally at number two. So that's something interesting. Uh, like I don't know how that's going to change as we move forward, but if this kind of cornerback group returns in 2022, I think Emmanuel Moseley and Ambry Thomas are the starters.
I think I do have a great that he is Emmanuel Moseley is a very, very, very good cornerback too. I just think the 49ers should give him more responsibilities and make him turn him into a number one corner. You can't. So for me, when I say give him the responsibility, he's shown all the capabilities, the lateral movement, the locking up DK Metcalf. He showed good signs of playing against DeAndre Hopkins. He's shown good signs against other receivers that are elite. Now, I think the 49ers they need to allow him to travel with the number one receivers. Give him that confidence. Hey, I believe you could travel with number one receivers whenever you want. Now we should allow you to do it. I think Ambry Thomas will be a very good complementary cornerback to him. And I think Ambry Thomas could develop into a solid lockdown corner with the lateral movement he has and the speed he has. I believe he could turn into a solid cornerback one. And there's difference. So a lot of people talk about cornerback one, cornerback two. You could be a cornerback one and not be elite. And then what I mean by that, you could be a very good cornerback one, and you're borderline where on some teams you would be the cornerback two, but for most teams you're corner one. And I think both corners have that ability to be a cornerback one, to match up man to man with some of the best receivers in the NFL. So I'm very happy with what I've seen from Ambry Thomas over the past couple weeks. So it's on to Hufanga, I believe, where they could possibly get better in the secondary. Because I don't think they'll get Tart back. I really don't think they'll have enough to bring Tart back. So that's where you probably might go out and see if you can get a strong safety on the cheaper end who's very good at playing. Even if he's not good, as long as he's sound, you don't need great secondary players. You need sound secondary players who won't bust coverages, who are going to do their assignment. They're going to do their job. That's what you need, and that's guys like Emmanuel Moseley. Jimmy Ward is one of those guys, and now he's turning into an elite safety in terms of getting the ball from other quarterbacks and stuff. So I'm excited to see what the 49ers build around Trey Lance on that defense, offense, and I'm excited to see them this week against the Houston Texans, starting with guys like Ambry Thomas. It's finally his time to step up. I believe if he steps up this week, I believe he earns his way into the starting rotation over Josh Norman, because that'd be 3 weeks in a row where he puts very solid games on tape.
And I get what you mean. One thing I wanted to point out before moving on the cornerback position, I know like what you're saying, right? You'd want cornerback ones to be able to tail the number one receiver. The thing is, San Francisco defenses since Saleh days haven't really done that. When we see Richard Sherman, right? In Seattle, Richard Sherman may have tailed Michael Crabtree and all these cornerback ones, but right, like when he got to San Francisco, Richard Sherman was a one-sided cornerback. He was on that right side for the entirety of his time here as a strictly zoned cornerback. He didn't really tail the cornerback or the wide receiver one, no matter what side of the field he went on. And that's how I think how San Francisco defenses are kind of built in the secondary. We have the one side, we have the other side. That's how the cornerbacks play, and that's why it's susceptible to whether each quarterback could be a CB1 on a team, because we haven't seen their full talents on either side. And I think that continues to stand in 2022. That's why you see sometimes where, like in the last game, right? A.J. Brown was lined up on the left side for a good portion. He moved to the right side, but Josh Norman doesn't follow him. It's Ambry Thomas. That's where you got the Ambry Thomas or the big play from A.J. Brown, because normally you'd see Julio Jones lined up, wide receiver 2 lined up on CB2. But that's just how the 49ers scheme. But moving on to the point that you brought up, Jaquiski Tartt, right? He's one of the players that the 49ers are going to have to make a decision on in the offseason. Do they bring him back or do they not? Is he going to be out of their price range or is he not? So that's one thing definitely that is unknown for the 49ers. And we have a little bit of differing opinion. I definitely think they should bring Jaquaski Tart back. I think he's one of the necessities, not only because he's better than Hufanga, but I think this 49er defense operates so well when you run in these three safety sets. When you have Tart, Hufanga, and Jimmy Ward on the field at the same time, I think that is such a huge W for the 49ers. And I think that's why he's a must to bring back, because we saw how Hufanga kind of lost coverage against Jamar Chase in the Cincinnati game. We've seen
That was
Hufanga.
a very Rohan. That was a very hard play because
I know.
now
I understand
as
because
you
it's so prolonged, but I'm saying
prolong and then you allow Joe Burrow to get out of the pocket when he should have been sacked. So it's like that play. You want a safety. Not many safeties make that play. I'll be honest with you. I don't think Tart makes that play on Jamar Chase because when you look at the way Joe Burrow rolls out and then he makes that throw, I don't see many safeties make that play. And on this comment,
he's
Edita
talking
says
about
Ambry
subpar
Thomas is
technique. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that subpar technique
so
from Ambry Thomas?
Ambry Thomas is actually 6 foot. He runs a 4.3, so he's not 6'3". He's
Yeah,
not that
six
tall.
foot.
I wish he
He's about
was,
6 foot
but
190. 6'3" would have been great for the
yeah,
physicals, but
especially
he's about
with
6'3", 190, 185, depending on how you see it.
so
But yeah,
seeing subpar technique, I would actually say he actually doesn't have subpar technique. I think he's turning his head to the ball. His hips move very well. He's staying dick to hip. That's a cornerback saying, dick to hip. You want to stay on his hip.
right,
His hips sink very well. He's breaking on balls. He has no wasted steps. Now with the line of scrimmage, so what a lot of young corners struggle at the line of scrimmage is they
right.
tend
Is winning
to
that battle.
it's winning the battle at the line of scrimmage, especially when you're a press man corner.
Mhm.
So you want to get your hands on at least one, if not two. But then when you go with one, and if you miss, you're lunging now. So that's the problem with Ambry Thomas right now. Is if you're coming from college where you're way more physically gifted than other dudes, because you're running a 4.3, you're 6 foot, you're more physically gifted than a guy who goes to Minnesota who's running a 4.6, doesn't have the lateral movement. So you're able to get your hands on and you're able to control the line of scrimmage. So he had to understand that. And I think last week against AJ Brown, he got very physical at the line of scrimmage a few times where he won the battle
Right.
with one hand and he rode to the sideline and he used the sideline as the 12th man on the field. And I think that was a very positive sign because quarterbacks are going to have great reps. Quarterbacks are going to have very, very bad reps. There's no in between. You might have an okay rep, but then people aren't going to give you credit for that. So it's either a good rep or a bad rep for a corner.
Right.
And I think Ambry Thomas has put together more good reps than he has bad reps in the past couple weeks. And a guy that I talked to a lot, Eric Crocker. So I talking to Eric, and he was like, "Yeah, man, because
Right.
I really think Ambry Thomas has played well. I think it's more so him just needing the reps. So the first couple of weeks, a couple times we've seen him, it was him in very short spurts. And Eric Crocker, and this was me and him on the phone. I was like, Croc, what does he have to do? Like, he goes, well, the thing is, Marco, he goes, with corners like Ambry Thomas, when they're not getting much reps, they're not getting much PT, which is playing time. He goes, if you put one bad rep together, that's what everyone remembers you for. They don't remember you for any
Right.
good reps. They remember you
Just
for
like
your bad
offensive
reps as a
line.
corner.
Yeah.
Facts. And so for Ambry Thomas, when you're playing in short periods, you get 5 bad reps back to back to back to back, whatever the case may be. Now you don't have the opportunity to put 10 reps or 5 good reps back to back to back. So that's where he's actually excelled the past couple of weeks. When he has a bad play, it's not another bad play. It's actually good reps streaming right after each other. So I think the technique is better than a lot of people are saying. I think Ambry Thomas just needs the reps. He just needs the NFL game speed, the NFL physicality. I don't think, like, for example, we see Russell Gage go up on Ambry Thomas again in the Falcons the week prior to the Titans game. And then we
Right.
see Ambry Thomas make 2 plays on the ball in the end zone.
Right.
One that would have been a deep bomb and on a fade route. I thought those are great technique, especially the fade
I
route.
agree.
He closed the gap and played the hands. You can't ask much for a corner in
Play the
terms
man.
of playing the hands. So when you're going up against AJ Brown like that, what I'm asking for a corner, when I'm playing or I'm coaching, whatever the case may be, is play the hands on a fade route. Play the hands. Go routes are the hardest passes to complete because if you're playing a corner here to here with the receiver, they're matched up. You have to throw over me, and if I'm extending, it's going to be a hard catch, and it's going to be a very good play by the receiver. So I thought that was a very great technique by playing the hands, ripping through, punching through. So I wouldn't say it's technique. I think it's more so just the lack of reps.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing from Ambry Thomas, we see the improvement. In the first game that he played, Ambry Thomas against Jamar Chase, he was struggling to win the battle, right? He had the 2 penalties that everyone remembers him for. And then right after that, like you see Jamar Chase getting the first step on him. When we talk about Ambry Thomas being in position, that's because Ambry Thomas's recovery was very strong in that game. That's why
Oh
he
yeah,
was able to be in position. But the thing is, when you lose the battle at the line of scrimmage, even when you recover as well as he did, Jamar Chase is able to make plays on the ball just because, like, Jamar Chase is obviously a talented receiver, right? But losing that battle at the line of scrimmage hurt the Ambry Thomas just that sliver enough for Jamar Chase to make a play on the ball and Jamar Chase to, score touchdowns on that deep ball, do whatever he can, and also, get the play and move the ball forward. That's the one thing that cornerbacks are going to get remembered for, right? The bad plays, like you said. But in the last 2 games, especially in this last game against the Tennessee Titans, when you have such a dominant jump ball receiver like A.J. Brown, you're saying play the hands because A.J. Brown is going to outjump you. A.J. Brown is going to outrun
yep.
you. But the thing is, when the ball comes, you just need to make sure you knock it out of his hands. And he has strong hands. So the way you do that, don't hit before the ball comes. As soon as that ball comes, you're not looking to grab the ball. You're not looking to hit the ball out. You're looking to just make sure his hands are diverted so he can't grasp the ball and make sure that he can make a play on the ball in the end zone. And that just saved the 49ers 7 points. Like when we talk about how good the defense was, Ambry Thomas definitely was a part of that. The cornerback group was definitely solid. I think Ambry Thomas was the best cornerback on the field on Thursday for the 49ers, and he can
I
definitely
agree.
improve on that. But moving on to what you said about Jaquaski Tart, who do you think gets brought back in 2022? Because I think Jaquaski Tart should be. Who do you think gets brought back out of the group?
Out of the entire secondary,
No, just out of
or
the on the
or
team in general. Like
I
out of
would
the key
prefer
free
DJ.
agents, like yeah, go ahead.
I would prefer DJ Jones over Jaquaski Tart. I would definitely try to bring back Arden Key. I would definitely bring back Mo Hurst, even though he hasn't played. I would bring him back. I don't know if I'd bring Tart back. I'll be honest. I don't. I wouldn't bring Tart back. That's probably what I would say. I would rather go out and draft Jordan Battle in the second round, um, or
Oh,
go
you're
out
a
bring
big
in a
battle
free
guy.
free.
Yeah,
Yeah, I actually think Battle is a very good corner safety.
I
I
know
would
what you
actually
mean.
go out to
Hmm.
see who's available in free agency at the time. Trade during the offseason, see who's available. Because the reason why I said don't bring Tart back is I think he's going to get paid more than what the 49ers are going to be able to offer. I would rather the 49ers go get, and this is where it gets tricky. We don't know if Alex Mack is going to be back, if he's going to retire, whether the case, he's already 36. Um,
Yeah, but
I
I
don't know
think
if Mack's going to
he
be back.
was. I think the intention was that he was going to return in 2022 because I know he signed the 3-year deal, but it's essentially a 1-year deal. So he was going to
Yep.
take it year by year. I think the intention is that he returns, but if he doesn't, then yeah, we do need another center for sure, just like an Alex Mack.
So that's what I'm saying. Like if you don't, then things get tricky. So like go get a right guard instead of a strong safety, and like so it's if Aaron Banks isn't starting at this point, I don't know if he's and I'm a
But yeah, talking, I know what you're saying about Aaron Banks, right? If he's not brought back right in 20, or I mean, if he hasn't started right now, I think the thing is they don't want to make a change this late in the season. I think Aaron Banks with a full offseason, he didn't have an offseason this year because he got injured, and then after that he was out of shape, so they didn't really play him. So I think the thing is right now, Aaron Banks, like he has an offseason. If the 49ers can't see or get what they want, then you might consider making a move either in 2023 or midseason. But I think Aaron Banks has to be the day one starter just because you drafted him in the second round right now. That's the one thing. But looking at the free agents that they got to bring back, I think Laken Tomlinson is at the top of the list just because Laken Tomlinson is at a Pro Bowl this year and he's getting paid 5.5 this year. I think they got to extend him because he's been such a staple since he got here from Detroit in I think 2017. He's just been very, very dominant and at a Pro Bowl caliber level. There's nothing more than you. There's nothing more that you want from Laken Tomlinson. And him and Trent Williams on that left side, that's just going to be so beautiful for Trey Lance's blind side. So I think you got to bring back Laken Tomlinson as one of the players this year. Another guy who I think they got to bring back, like you said, is DJ Jones. I think DJ Jones is one of the best nose tackles in football, just in football, period. DJ Jones is such a good run stuffer. And like Arik Armstead, DJ Jones in the run game requires 1 to 2 guys because he's so fast and he can just get in the backfield just like that. You saw in the Titans game, right? They knew that with this 49ers pass rush in the beginning, if they weren't going to max protect, they had to get the ball out quick. So they were doing all these quick runs. They were doing screenplays. On one of the runs that Donta Foreman had, DJ Jones blew up in the backfield, got a 3-yard loss, just like that. You can see 2 of those plays every single game from DJ Jones. That's just who he is. So I think he's one of the more key players to bring back, especially because you don't know what you're getting in Javon Kinlaw. Guy's been injured. He has a regenerative knee issue, and you don't know if he's going to be ever fully healthy just because he had these knee issues at South Carolina. They drafted him at 14. I wanted a receiver. I was on a different level. But moving forward, like DJ Jones, I think you got to bring back. Another guy, I said Tart. I think Tart is so perfect for this 49er system. He might price himself out of San Francisco's range, but I think Tark's back or Tark should be brought back just because having that safety tandem of Ward and Tart for another year would definitely solidify any issues in the secondary that the 49ers are like that the 49ers might have a cornerback, because they've
I
had
agree.
average
I agree
cornerback
at that
play,
point.
but they've had stellar safety play, which kind of like shadows that average cornerback play this offseason or this year. So I think that that's one reason. If Tart gets over 6.5, or sorry, not 6.5, like 6-ish a year, I think you have to let him go just because you don't want to put that much money into Tart when you can also put that into an edge rusher, right? Which is a much more key position in your defense. So I think it depends on how much they pay Tart. But if Tart remains not as valuable due to his injury history and all that, even though he hasn't been really that injured this year, I think that that's one thing or one player that you could definitely bring back for 2022.
I mean, I'm not. I get keeping your safety tandem together. In terms of keeping Tart and Jimmy Ward together because they do make up a lot for that secondary. But for me, Hufang has actually played not too bad. I mean, in terms of secondary, he's actually played well. But then you also have guys like K1. But I don't think K1 comes back because K1 should be getting paid very, very good money. I think
You're right.
K1
Oh,
Williams is a
that's
good
one guy I
corner.
forgot. Oh my God,
I
K'Wan
think K1
Williams, like
is
in the slot as a stout run tackler, I think he's definitely one guy you have to bring back just because Deommodore Lenoir, like he's the next replacement, right? At nickelback. I think that's what they drafted him for. But I don't think he's near K'Wan Williams' tackling ability, which is why they might want to bring him back and develop Deommodore Lenoir for another year.
Yeah, and see Lenore, I think Lenore is capable of being that slot guy. But a guy like K'Wan Williams, I would definitely rather bring back K'Wan Williams than Jaquiski Tart. I don't know how to pronounce his name. But some people say Jaquiski, some people say Jaquiski. But I would definitely
Mhm.
rather bring K1 back than Tart. Only because I think K1 provides a little bit more in terms of coverage skills. And he's able to match up in the slot with the best of them. And he's a very sure tackler. And I think the coverage skills is where I would rather have over the tackling ability that Tart has. Because Tart, he brings the boom, he's great close to the line of scrimmage. But on tight ends this year, he hasn't been that great on tight ends as he has in the past. So I believe it's time to move on from Tart. I think you have to stick with guys like DJ Jones. Definitely would try to re-sign. Even though so I'm gonna say like re-sign guys who, even though they're restricted free agents, exclusive right free agents. So guys like Aziz Al Shair, I would definitely try to sneak him in on a 3-year deal, 4-year deal, where it's a very, very team friendly deal because after his restricted free agency, I believe he'll have a restricted free agency, and then he has 1 year on that, and then he becomes a free
Yeah,
agent. I believe
1 year on
the
that
way
and
it
then
is.
free agency.
So I would definitely try to sneak in a 4 year deal, a team friendly deal on that, because I think he's better than Dre Greenlaw, Dre Greenlaw is a solid
Yeah,
bat.
yeah. Dre Greenlaw. I mean, at least right now, because Dre Greenlaw, he's been injured the entire year. Like he got injured in week one, pulled the same
Even
groin injury, and he has. I mean, like Aziz Shire and Dre Greenlaw, they're a bit of a different player, obviously, because Aziz Shire is much more of a factor in the run game. Dre Greenlaw, obviously, he's known because of his pass coverage skills. We've seen the interceptions, we've seen like his stout plays. But I think Aziz Shire, especially given that Fred Warner is such an amazing guy in pass coverage, having that like explosive, electrifying type of player as a linebacker in the in the run game, I think that that's important to just have that diversity in the linebacker core and also be able to defend the run with such an ability while also defending the pass. Like being two sided, I think is extremely important for this defense, which is why I think Aziz Shire is such a great fit alongside Fred Warner.
and even then, I always thought Dre Greenlaw was overrated. The fan base tends to prop certain players up, and I think Dre Greenlaw was propped up for the play that he had in Seattle. That
Mhm.
play his rookie year
I know
in
what you mean. Yeah,
Seattle
because
propped him up.
obviously
So
fan favorite when you see that type of play. Quick comment: if K1 walks in free agency, should we slide Lenore to the slot or look to the draft? What are your thoughts?
Lenore was drafted to play slot. He wasn't drafted to be outside, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because if the 49ers really thought Lenore was drafted, they drafted him to play outside, I think he would have played over Avery Thomas. Why? I think the 49ers played Lenore outside in necessity because they didn't
Yeah,
think
that's
Avery
exactly what I was
Thomas
about to
was
say.
ready in the beginning of the year. So they played him out of necessity. And then once Avery Thomas became ready, they're like, okay, if something happens, he's definitely stepping in because he's the guy we wanted outside. And I just think K1 hasn't gotten hurt. Thankfully, he hasn't gotten hurt, so we haven't seen Lenore inside. So that's who we're gonna see most likely inside next year if K1 walks in free agency. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a very good thing because
Mhm.
Lenore knows the defense. He played fairly well, and then he had his games where he played very bad. So I think it's good to see he actually got reps. Um, I'm comfortable playing Lenore inside next year in the slot if K1 walks.
I agree. I actually think I agree with what exactly you said in that Lenore was kind of drafted to play in the slot. I in my projected depth chart, I thought Lenore was the backup nickelback going into the season. He was
Mm-hmm.
I think he was forced to the outside out of necessity just because Ambry Thomas hasn't played football in over a year. You draft him, you want to make sure he's ready, especially because he's your prize project at corner. He was drafted in the third, Lenore in the fifth. And then like it kind of shows what they think of Lenore on the outside when you sign a player off the street in Josh Norman and immediately start him the second he's ready. It was a week and
Yeah.
a half after they signed Norman off the street that they inserted him into the starting lineup over Lenore. Then Lenore had the personal issue with I think it was the birth of his baby that he caused to miss a couple of games. So he's been off his game a little bit, and you saw him in the Seattle game for the small number of reps where
Mm-hmm.
he was getting cooked by DK Metcalf. And that's a place where it's different from Ambry Thomas because you're not in position on those plays against DK Metcalf. And obviously, it's such a big player in such a player of such caliber in DK Metcalf. But Lenore was not in position. Metcalf was open on a good amount of plays. He Metcalf was able to use route like Metcalf is not a guy with such a strong route tree, but yeah, he was able to shake Lenore on a good amount of plays. But I think also K1 Williams is a guy um, that is not very replaceable in terms of like Williams's tackling ability is very, very strong. And I know we saw the missed tackle on the Ryan Tannehill run at the end of the last game, but I think Lenore, like we drafted him for a reason, and it's not like we shouldn't play him. Or if we have a guy on the roster that we set for a specific role, we shouldn't put him in a different role or just set him aside and try and find another option in free agency or the draft,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we know they're not going to be to the caliber that we expected in K1 Williams. So I think we definitely should try and slide Lenore to the slot rather than look to the draft.
And honestly, I really do think Lenore's going to flourish inside the slot. He has that
Yeah.
build of a slot corner. He's a thick frame, smaller guy with long arms. Well, and that's what you need as a slot corner. If you look at K1, he's not thick, he's not really, but he's long. He's super long and physical. So that's where he makes up for him not being as thick. And I think Lenore is going to be very good in the slot.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to again, who gets brought back. So you said K1 over Lenore. What do you think about guys like Jason Verrett and all these like injury prone type of guys? Jason Verrett being brought back or Raheem Mostert being brought back. What do you think about those type of things?
So, Rohan, you bring those guys back, but you don't bring them back to be starters. If they become starters, great. But you don't bring guys like Jason Verrett, Raheem Mostert back to be your starting running backs, or running back and cornerback. And the reason why I say that is because, so when we do that, if you bring back and you put all your chips into Jason Verrett again, and I thought it was a bad idea to bring him back with no backup plan at the corner just in case he got hurt. Your backup plan was of two rookie corners. I thought that was a bad idea because we know the extent of his injury history. We knew that the last season was an outlier of him staying healthy. So for me, I was like, man, like we might struggle in the secondary if he goes down. And sure enough, it proved. It sucks to see a corner of his caliber go down because he's a hell of a talent when he's healthy. And Raheem Mostert, I thought the 49ers should have traded. I was a very big 49ers should trade Raheem Mostert when they even before the draft. Um, it sounds weird because Raheem Mostert was this electric guy that the fans love, a very good running back, explosive. But the reason why I thought the 49ers should trade him is because running backs have a value for a short period of time in the NFL. And with Kyle and Bobby Turner's history with running backs and putting people in the backfield and getting production out of them, I think it's a very good idea to just go get draft capital for a player of Raheem Mostert who they probably could have got a fourth rounder for him to a team who needed a running back because he's a good running back. He's not bad. He's a very good running back. So I would have definitely had traded him. And this is just me before the draft. I have tweets out there, especially when they signed Wayne Gallman, who Wayne Gallman I think is a better running back than people thought. A lot of the
Same.
fans like,
Yeah,
he
I didn't
sucks.
like cutting him.
So I was a very like, as soon as they signed, I was like, they just signed a starting caliber running back who could carry the load if someone goes down.
Mhm.
And I don't mean like a starting caliber, like, oh, he's going to be our bow cow kind of guy. I thought he played very well in New York when Barkley went down. So I was like, okay, if they
Yeah.
trade Raheem Mostert, they draft a running back or two in the draft. Sure enough, they end up drafting two running backs in the draft. Two of them who I think are going to be good. I think Trey Sermon's more built for a guy like Trey Lance in zone read.
Mhm.
I think that's what he's more so built for. Um, Versus Elijah Mitchell's built for that one cut downhill zone scheme. So I think it's a very good tandem that the 49ers have in the running backs. I'm excited to see what they do, but I wouldn't bring back those two guys if you told me, hey, the Niners brought back Trace Raheem Mostert. Sorry, I'm so hyped on Trey Lance starting that every player I want to name is Trey Lance right now. So if you told me
Mhm.
they're bringing back Jason Verrett and Raheem Mostert as their starting running back and cornerback, I would be very shocked. I would be very confused on why they're bringing back injury-prone players to be their starting caliber players.
And I agree. I don't think that they should be brought back as starters if they're brought back. Most are more than Verrett. But I think I think the one thing is you got to view value, right? And obviously you're going to get both of these players at a cheaper contract. And the thing is, it depends. Like in Mostert's case, you have to look. Kyle Shanahan will carry four running backs 53 in roster. Will Mostert be one of them because you have Elijah Mitchell, who was essentially a Mostert replacement for 2022. I don't think they
Yep,
expected him to play in 2021 as much as he did. He was supposed to be the Mostert replacement in 2022. But you have Mitchell, you have Trey Sermon, like you just said. You have guys like JaMycal Hasty. I don't know if he gets brought back.
I don't
You
think
also
so.
have Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson, who's also a free agent. So I don't know if he gets brought back. But you have those four. I think if one of those four does not get brought back, meaning the latter two, I think then there's a possibility for Raheem Mostert to be there as the third or fourth running back and just serve as that kind of change of pace kind of guy in terms of he's probably the guy, if he gets brought back, he's probably the guy with the best vision on the team and obviously that most outright speed. So
I
you
wouldn't.
sign him.
I don't know if I'll say. Sorry to stop you, but I don't know if I'd say he
Yeah,
has the best vision on the team. Because honestly do think that's Elijah Mitchell. So
interesting.
When we watch Raheem
Interesting.
Mostert run the ball, we see Raheem Mostert hit a gap as fast as he possibly can, but we don't see him cut. We don't see him. So when I see great vision, I think of guys like Frank Gore. When they're in the hole, they could jump cut because they see the lane closing one way, but they see it opening another way. That's vision to me. So when I see guys like Raheem Mostert just hitting the hole because that's where coach told him the hole's gonna be, and that's where the play's supposed to go. That's just you doing what you're supposed to do. Because when the hole wasn't there for Raheem Mostert in 2020, he had a lot of plays where if it wasn't for big plays that he hit, just hitting that hole, he would have only had about like 30 yards in some games, and he ended up having 150 in a game because he had that play that hit for 70 yards and a play that hit for 30 because he hit the hole. But a lot of times what he does is he hits the hole and it's not there, and he would get tackled at the line of scrimmage or get 2 yards versus a guy like Elijah Mitchell, when the hole's not there, he's able to create for himself because he finds the holes. He's able to see the vision, and that's what I mean by that's what I think when I see vision or when people talk
Mhm.
vision. So I honestly think Raheem Mostert would be probably the third best running back in terms of vision
Behind
on
him
this
and
team.
Wilson.
Yeah, behind Wilson. Yeah, behind Mitchell and Wilson.
Interesting, because when I see Raheem Mostert, what I see is fluidity, right? That's kind of what I see when you. I know it's running an offense, but I also see the fluidity in which he turns
Mm-hmm.
up field, which he looks. And sure, he might not be able to like if the cutting ability isn't as strong as you'd like. I think he matches that with the speed, and that's where I think he trusts. Sometimes he trusts the speed over the cutting ability and over the vision. But I think it doesn't mean that the vision isn't there, if you know what I mean.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. That's
Yeah,
and it
but
probably is that he trusts his speed more than cutting back because he believes he's the fastest dude in the world and he could get to that hole.
right, right. But yeah, if we bring Mitchell back, it'd be likely as a third or fourth back. And we could sign a guy like we did this offseason in Wayne Gallman and add him to the 53-man roster. But Shanahan normally carries four. That's why I think there's a little more optimism in Mitchell being brought back in terms of running backs, but it'd be on a cheaper deal, a very team friendly deal. And that's why I think it helps the 49ers more than it hurts them because it'd probably be like a very little guaranteed money deal. See if you can make it through training camp. If you can, and if you show that you can be healthy, then guess what? You deserve the money. So it'd probably be an incentive laden deal like the Jason Verrett deal was this year. And I think they can definitely bring Verrett back as either a backup or to challenge Ambry Thomas for the starting spot just to start the season next year. To just bring some open competition and some veteran presence to this 49ers locker room because we saw the wonders that Richard Sherman and we saw the wonders that Emmanuel Sanders did to the locker room portion because Debo Samuel said how much he turned like how good he was as a player once Emmanuel Sanders kind of came to the locker room. Like his work ethic changed and all that. So I think a veteran presence is definitely necessary. I don't know if Jason Verrett's that guy, but I think we can get him at a value discount, and we can definitely see him challenge for one of those starting spots, but likely resort to being that third cornerback on this team. I think
And
getting both back at value positions would be helpful for the 49ers.
and I agree with you because you do want a veteran corner on the team who could help Avery Thomas going into his second year with not too many starts under his belt. To help a guy
Right.
like Emmanuel Mosley be that alpha dog. You want those kind of guys. So yeah, I won't mind if he comes back as the third corner on the team or even the fourth or whatever the case may be. Um, but Raheem Mostert, so there's a good chance he does come back as the running back three. Um, but I think the 49ers also bring in an undrafted free agent at the running back position
Mhm.
who ends up being the fourth running back on the roster.
Right.
Because the way Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch see it is if you bring in an undrafted free agent at that position who could provide you some offense and provide you production at a very cheap cost, that is a player where you win on. That's a steal. So, for example,
Mhm.
like Aziz Al Shair, what he's doing this year is an absolute steal of a player in terms of how
Right.
much he's making. So I think they definitely bring in a undrafted free agent at running back or a very, very cheap running back in the offseason. And if they do bring in a guy like Raheem Mostert, bring back Raheem Mostert, it has to be incentive based because you can't give
Right.
a running back like Raheem Mostert $2-3 million and he's not
Oh,
giving you
hell no.
any production.
Right. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Two some other guys that are like kind of in terms of that, maybe not injury prone type, but what do you think about bringing in players that are like of that similar caliber but similar like I guess like mantra behind them? What do you think about bringing in those type of talents for the
Injury
49ers
prone
in the
players,
offseason? Yeah,
eh,
just in general.
don't do it. Don't do it. Why? Like
Okay.
just the way I see it is the way why I say that is because as a 49er fan base, as a team, we always talk about we're always hit with the injury bug, right? So
Hmm.
why do we go out and sign injury prone players? So like, why go sign a guy who I don't know if he's gonna play for me or not? Even if you get him on a team friendly deal, it's like, well, yeah, that was friendly, that was great, but I could have paid 3-4 more million dollars for a player who I know is gonna play 16 to 17 games in the year. Um, so for me, it's one of those situations where I would rather get a player who doesn't have the injury concern, because it makes you a little bit more confident going into the season at that position. But however, it's just injuries are luck. Injuries are just luck. It's nothing else to do with it. It's not. I don't think it's a training staff. I don't think it's anything. If we look at the entire NFL, I think this year and last year have been a very injury-ridden years for teams, and I think it has to do with COVID. I really do think it has to do with the fact that these players can't work out as much as they normally would in certain situations or stuff like that. But I'm not the biggest fan in bringing players who are injury prone.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair statement just because, especially with the point that you brought up, how the 49ers are always known as this injury ridden team. Even this year, like when we see these injury charts that CBS provides, 49ers at 32nd, right? Like it doesn't hurt that you have players that you're paying that you don't like, you're paying players to not play games if they're injured. So that hurts you, especially when you have such like a talented team with five top 30 players, with such a talented team, top 10 on both sides of the ball. It doesn't hurt when you're killing your own self. Self-inflicted mistakes. I don't know if you call signing an injured player self-inflicted mistakes, but that's what this 49ers team is like. That's like the narrative behind them as to what their downfall has been this season. So adding to the flame, I don't think it helps the 49ers as much, especially when like, they're not homegrown talents or they're not talents that are already with the team that you know about their capabilities.
Yeah, and that's a great point because you don't want to put yourself in a situation as a fan base or as a team and team building perspective. And I think it's at that point where I think John Lynch should stay away from players like for example, Trey Sermon. I thought it was a good pick. I think Trey Sermon is a good running back. I also thought it was a questionable pick because he is an injured prone player, and it's like why are we picking injury prone players? Like we should be
Right.
staying away from those guys. So like that interesting one. The same thing with
Mhm.
Hufanga. He's been injured. He's a good player. He's just been injured. But I think the approach to this draft was more so let's get players who played in the Senior Bowl, because we were able to scout them a little bit better in person, and because a lot of stuff was via Zoom,
Right.
you couldn't really work players out. So that's what they really
Mhm.
wanted to see in person, scouting. So it's very interesting, Rohan. I think they should stay away from injury prone players from here on out. I'm not tired of having to see players go down. I feel for these players, especially guys
Right.
like Jason Verrett, who is if Jason Verrett never has any injury, he's probably a top five corner in the league.
Right. He was so talented coming out in 2013. But yeah, I mean, I definitely get your point, and I think that's a good place to end this first podcast. So all of y'all for coming in. Thank you guys for watching. It's definitely a lot to talk about for the 49ers, and we'll be back soon.
I will definitely be back. Hopefully next week, after a win against the Houston Texans. Definitely want to
And
talk about Trey
hopefully,
Lance.
yeah, even maybe a playoff spot clinched. That'd be very, very helpful. We'll see. But yeah, rock on 49ers, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Sounds good.